a convoy of black luxury SUVs rolled to a sudden stop beside a crowded roadside market. Ethan Carter barely noticed the traffic. His eyes were fixed on a woman standing over a smoking charcoal grill, carefully turning roasted corn as customers waited nearby. His heartbeat stumbled. No, it can't be. The woman looked up. The tongs slipped from her hand and clattered onto the ground. For a few silent seconds, neither of them moved. 20 years had passed, yet they recognized each other instantly. She was Olivia Bennett, the woman who had once looked him in the eyes and said, "Love doesn't pay the bills." Then she walked away from the man who had nothing. Now, the man she had abandoned was a billionaire, and she was standing barefoot behind a roadside corn stand. What happened next left everyone in that market speechless. But before we continue, welcome to Story Lovers. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with unexpected twists, life lessons, and unforgettable endings, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Now, let's go back to where it all began. 22 years earlier, Ethan Carter owned little more than a worn backpack, a second-hand bicycle, and dreams that everyone around him called impossible. He lived in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city with his widowed mother, Margaret. The roof leaked whenever it rained. The kitchen was barely large enough for two people to stand inside at the same time. Yet every morning, Ethan woke up convinced that one day things would change. His mother admired that optimism. "Dreams are free," she often told him. "Just make sure you work hard enough to pay for them." And Ethan worked harder than anyone she knew. During the day, he attended university classes. In the evenings, he delivered packages across town. At night, he studied until exhaustion forced him to sleep. Life wasn't easy, but there was one thing that made every struggle feel worthwhile. Olivia Bennett. She was smart, beautiful, and full of life. Whenever Ethan felt overwhelmed, one conversation with her seemed to make the world brighter. The two had met during their first year at university. What started as friendship quickly grew into something deeper. By graduation, everyone assumed they would eventually get married, including Ethan. He often talked about the future, a small house, a happy family, a successful business. Olivia would smile whenever he described those plans. At first, she believed in them too. But as the years passed, reality began to chip away at her faith. While many of their classmates found stable jobs, Ethan chased business ideas. One failed, then another, and another. Every setback cost money they didn't have. Friends began whispering that Ethan was unrealistic. Some called him foolish. Others called him lazy, despite the endless hours he worked. Olivia defended him for years, until defending him became exhausting. One evening, after another failed business proposal, the couple sat together on a park bench. The silence between them felt unusually heavy. Ethan noticed. "What's wrong?" Olivia stared at the ground. "We need to talk." Those 4 words instantly made his stomach tighten. He turned toward her. "Okay." She took a long breath. "Ethan, how much longer?" He frowned. "How much longer for what?" "For this." She gestured vaguely. "The struggle, the uncertainty, the waiting." Ethan looked away. He already knew where the conversation was heading. "I'm close," he said quietly. "I can feel it." Olivia shook her head. "You've been saying that for years." The words hit harder than he expected. "I know things are difficult." "Difficult?" she replied. "Ethan, we're almost 30. Your mother is sick. You can barely pay rent. Every plan depends on a future that hasn't happened yet." He remained silent. Not because he disagreed, because he didn't know how to respond. Olivia's voice softened. "I love you." For a moment, relief washed over him. Then she continued, "But love isn't enough." His heart sank. She stood from the bench. Tears filled her eyes. "I can't keep living like this. Olivia, I'm sorry." He rose quickly. "Don't do this." She looked at him one last time. A mixture of sadness and frustration crossed her face. Then came the sentence he would remember for the rest of his life. "Love doesn't pay the bills." A few seconds later, she walked away. And this time, she didn't look back. For weeks, Ethan felt like he was moving through a fog. He stopped answering calls, stopped seeing friends, stopped talking about dreams. Even his mother worried. One evening, she entered his room and found him staring silently at the wall. "You miss her?" He nodded. Margaret sat beside him. "You know something?" "What?" "The world has a strange way of testing people." Ethan gave a tired smile. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "No," she laughed softly. "It's supposed to remind you that this chapter isn't the whole book." Those words stayed with him. Slowly, Ethan returned to work. Not because he felt inspired, because he had no choice. Rent still needed to be paid. His mother still needed medication. Life continued moving, whether he wanted it to or not. Months later, while working a delivery route, he noticed something. A local manufacturing company constantly struggled to track inventory. The same issue appeared in another company, then another. An idea began forming. Unlike his previous business attempts, this one solved a real problem. For nearly a year, Ethan worked obsessively. Most people would have called it impossible. He called it necessary. Some nights he slept in his office chair. Other nights he didn't sleep at all. Every rejection strengthened his determination. Every setback sharpened his focus. Gradually, small clients became larger clients. Larger clients became major contracts. The company grew, then expanded, then exploded. 10 years later, Ethan Carter became one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Newspapers called him visionary. Business magazines featured him on their covers. Television hosts requested interviews. Investors competed for opportunities to work with him. Yet despite all the success, one memory remained untouched. A park bench, a goodbye, and 4 words. Love doesn't pay the bills. At first, those words fueled him. Later, they haunted him. Because no matter how much money he earned, he never completely stopped wondering what might have happened if she had stayed. Then came the rainy afternoon that brought everything full circle. The afternoon when traffic forced his convoy to stop beside a crowded roadside market. Rain tapped steadily against the tinted windows of Ethan Carter's SUV. The voices of impatient drivers blended with the crackling sound of charcoal fires burning beneath dozens of roadside grills. For a long moment, he simply stared. The woman standing behind the corn stand looked older than the Olivia he remembered. A few strands of gray had begun to appear in her dark hair. Her hands, once soft enough to fit perfectly inside his, were now rough from years of hard work. Her clothes were clean but faded. She carefully brushed the roasted corn with melted butter before handing one to a waiting customer with a warm smile. It wasn't a forced smile. It was the kind worn by people who had learned to carry pain without letting the world see it. "Ethan?" His driver turned around. "Sir?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the door. One of his security guards quickly stepped forward. "Sir, please wait. Let us secure the area." Ethan gently raised a hand. "No. But, sir, I'll be fine." He stepped onto the wet pavement. The expensive leather shoes he wore were quickly splashed with muddy water, but he didn't seem to notice. Every step toward the small corn stand felt strangely heavier than the last. Olivia sensed someone approaching. Without looking up, she smiled politely. "Fresh roasted corn. Sweet and hot. Would you like one?" Then she lifted her head. The smile vanished. Her face turned pale. The roasting brush slipped from her fingers. "Ethan." The name barely escaped her lips. Neither of them spoke. The busy market around them seemed to disappear. Only the crackling charcoal remained. Finally, Ethan smiled politely. "I'll take one." Olivia swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as she reached for the best ear of corn on the grill. She brushed it carefully with butter, then wrapped it in paper. When she tried to hand it to him, her fingers shook so badly that she nearly dropped it. Ethan accepted it gently. "How much?" She lowered her eyes. It's 2,000 naira." Without hesitation, Ethan removed several crisp notes from his wallet and placed them on the wooden table. Olivia looked down. Her eyes widened. "Ethan, this is far too much." Keep the change." "I can't. You earned it." "No." She pushed the money back toward him. "I've made mistakes in my life." Her voice cracked. "But I won't take money I didn't earn." For the first time since arriving, Ethan looked directly into her eyes. The confidence he remembered was gone. What remained was humility and regret. He quietly placed the money back into his wallet. "Then I'll buy everything." She looked confused. "Everything?" "Every piece of corn you have today." She glanced at the grill. "There are almost 40. I'll take all of them." Several nearby customers stopped to watch. One whispered to another, "Isn't that Ethan Carter?" "I think it is." "The billionaire?" Within minutes, more people had gathered. Some raised their phones. Others simply watched in silence. Olivia became increasingly uncomfortable. "You don't have to do this." "I know, but I'd like to." She slowly packed every roasted corn into paper bags. When she finished, Ethan accepted them with a grateful smile. "Thank you." That was all he said. No accusations, no questions, no mention of the past. He turned around and walked back toward his waiting vehicle. Olivia watched him leave. Part of her wanted to call his name. Another part believed she no longer had the right. The convoy disappeared into the evening traffic. Only then did she realize tears were rolling down her cheeks. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The image of Olivia standing beside that charcoal grill refused to leave his mind. He walked onto the balcony of his penthouse and looked across the glittering skyline. The city celebrated his success. Luxury apartments, glass towers, private helicopters crossing the night sky. He had once dreamed of living exactly this life. So why did he feel so restless? The following morning, his executive assistant, Rebecca Lawson, entered his office carrying several folders. She immediately noticed he looked distracted. "Long night?" Ethan nodded. "I need you to do something. Anything." "I want you to find someone." Rebecca opened her notebook. "Who?" He hesitated. "Olivia Bennett." She waited for more information. "I don't need gossip," Ethan continued. "I want facts." Unquote. "What exactly should I look into?" "I want to know how she ended up selling roasted corn." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "You knew her?" "A lifetime ago." By late afternoon, the investigation had already begun. 3 days later, Rebecca returned. She placed a thick folder on Ethan's desk. "I think you should prepare yourself." He opened the file. The first page contained a photograph of Olivia standing beside the same roadside corn stand. The next pages told a story he never expected. After leaving Ethan, Olivia had indeed married a wealthy businessman named Victor Harrison. For a while, life appeared perfect. She lived in a beautiful home. She traveled abroad. She wore expensive clothes. Friends envied her. But the fairy tale didn't last. Victor wasn't the man everyone believed he was. Behind closed doors, he controlled every part of her life. He isolated her from friends. He constantly reminded her that everything she owned belonged to him. When his business collapsed because of fraudulent investments, he disappeared overseas, leaving enormous debts behind. Creditors seized nearly everything. The mansion, the cars, the savings, gone. Olivia returned to her hometown with nothing except a suitcase and her elderly mother. Only weeks later, doctors diagnosed her mother with kidney failure. The treatments were expensive. Olivia sold the last pieces of jewelry she still owned. When the money ran out, she searched desperately for work. No company wanted to hire a woman in her 40s with years missing from her resume. Eventually, an elderly woman in the market taught her how to roast corn. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid for medicine. Every morning before sunrise, Olivia prepared the charcoal. Every evening, she returned home carrying just enough money to buy food and medication. She repeated that routine for almost 9 years. Rebecca quietly broke the silence. "There's something else." Ethan looked up. Everyone we interviewed said the same thing. What was that? She never complained. Rebecca turned another page. Several times people offered her money. What did she do? She refused it. Ethan frowned. Why? According to her neighbors, she always says the same sentence. Rebecca read from her notes. "If I eat from someone else's pity today, I'll lose the strength to work tomorrow. Ethan slowly closed the file. For the first time in 20 years, he realized he had been carrying only half the story. He remembered the woman who had walked away. He had never imagined the woman she became afterward. Outside his office window, rain began falling again. He stared at the droplets sliding down the glass. Somewhere across the city, Olivia was probably lighting another charcoal fire, preparing tomorrow's corn. And for reasons he still couldn't explain, Ethan knew that buying every piece of corn that day had not been the end of their story. It had only been the beginning. The next morning, Ethan arrived at his office earlier than usual. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city that had once seemed impossible to conquer. For years, he had believed success would answer every question life had ever asked him. Instead, it had only introduced new ones. He pressed the intercom. "Rebecca, could you come in for a moment?" She entered carrying her tablet. "You wanted to see me? I need your help." "Of course. I don't want Olivia to know I'm involved." Rebecca nodded. "What do you have in mind?" "There's an empty shop near the Central Market. Buy it. And then? Renovate it, install proper equipment, refrigeration, shelves, a modern grill, everything she would need to run a real business." Rebecca smiled. "You want to give it to her?" "No." She looked puzzled. "I want her to earn it." Within 2 weeks, the shop was ready. A respected local businessman visited Olivia one afternoon. "I've heard wonderful things about your roasted corn," he said. "We're looking for someone to manage our new snack outlet. Are you interested?" Olivia looked around nervously. There must be someone more qualified. "We've already made our decision." "But why me?" "Because everyone says you never compromise on quality." She hesitated. "I don't have the money." "You won't need it." "And the rent?" "The owner believes in supporting hardworking people." Olivia couldn't understand why such an opportunity had appeared out of nowhere. Still, she accepted. The first few weeks were difficult. She had to learn bookkeeping, inventory management, customer service, and hiring staff. But she approached every challenge the same way she had approached life, with determination. Within 6 months, the tiny shop became one of the busiest snack businesses in the city. Office workers lined up every afternoon. Students recommended it to their friends. Travel bloggers began posting videos about the famous roasted corn. For the first time in years, Olivia smiled without forcing herself. She could finally afford her mother's medication without counting every naira. One evening, after closing the shop, she noticed a familiar black SUV parked across the street. Her heart skipped. Ethan stepped out. This time, he wasn't wearing a business suit, just a simple shirt and jeans. He walked toward her. "I've been hearing good things." Olivia laughed softly. "I still burn a few pieces." "I'm sure you do." For a moment, they stood there smiling awkwardly. "So," she said quietly, "it was you." Ethan didn't pretend not to understand. "You found out." "The landlord told me." Silence settled between them. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Why?" Ethan looked at the busy street before answering. "Because helping someone isn't the same as forgetting what happened." She lowered her eyes. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Maybe not." She nodded slowly. "You're right. I spent years hating you." "I know. I told myself that if I ever saw you again, I'd ignore you." Olivia closed her eyes. "I wouldn't have blamed you. But life has a strange way of changing people." He looked at her hands. Hands once adorned with bracelets were now marked by years of work. "You paid for your choices." "I did." "And I've paid for mine." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I buried myself in work." He smiled faintly. "I built companies. I built wealth. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to build a life." For the first time in years, they spoke honestly. No pride, no anger, no excuses, only truth. Olivia admitted that fear had controlled her all those years ago. She had convinced herself that choosing security over love was the sensible decision. Instead, she had lost both. Ethan admitted that success had not erased heartbreak. It had only hidden it beneath board meetings and business headlines. Their conversations continued over the following months, sometimes over coffee, sometimes while the shop was closing, sometimes during quiet walks through the same park where they had once dreamed about the future. There was no dramatic declaration of love, no sudden proposal. Trust was rebuilt one conversation at a time. One rainy afternoon, Ethan visited the shop again. He noticed an elderly woman arranging chairs outside. "Your mother?" Olivia smiled. "She's much stronger now." Margaret and Olivia's mother quickly became friends. Watching them laugh together made Ethan realize how differently life could have turned out. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the city skyline, Ethan and Olivia stood outside the shop watching customers leave with bags of roasted corn. Olivia broke the silence. "If you asked me 20 years ago what success looked like, I would have pointed at a mansion." She looked around the little shop. "Today," she smiled, "I think it looks more like peace." Ethan nodded. "I used to believe winning meant proving everyone wrong. And now? Now I think winning means becoming the kind of person your younger self would be proud of." They looked at each other. Neither rushed to define what they had become. Maybe they would fall in love again. Maybe they wouldn't. Some relationships don't return to where they started. They grow into something entirely different. Something built not on promises, but on understanding. As Ethan walked Olivia to her door that evening, she quietly reached for his hand. He looked at her. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask for another chance. She simply held his hand. And this time, he didn't let go. Perhaps love really can survive betrayal. Or perhaps forgiveness is the greatest form of love. That decision belongs to each person who hears this story. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If you were Ethan, would you have given Olivia a second chance after everything that happened? Or would you have forgiven her but walked away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. There's no right or wrong answer, and we genuinely love to read your perspective. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Story Lovers, and join us for another unforgettable story in our next video.